Have you guys heard about the horrific story of Maddie Clifton? On November 3rd, 1998, beautiful 8-year-old Maddie Clifton went missing in her neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida. Maddie asked her mom to go outside and play with some friends, but when she failed to come home for dinner, everybody was worried. Everyone in the neighborhood got together to search for Maddie in hopes to find her alive. 7 days later, on November 10th, Maddie's neighbor, Missy Phillips, runs across the street hysterically calling for police. Missy led police to her 14-year-old son's bedroom, and what she shows police next is super chilling. She explained to police that as she was cleaning her son's bedroom, she noticed that his waterbed was leaking, so as she pulled up his sheets, she saw Maddie's lifeless body laying in between the bed frame. Maddie's body was found partially clothed, bludgeoned with a baseball bat, and she was stabbed multiple times. Police quickly arrest Joshua Earl Phillips, and the story that he tells police is super disturbing. So he told police that Maddie came over to his house to play baseball and he accidentally hit her in the eye with the ball. Then he apparently took her into the house because she wouldn't stop crying, and as he dragged her in the house, her clothes came off. And then he hit her again with the baseball bat to get her to stop crying. So when his parents got home, he ran upstairs to check up on Maddie, and he noticed that she was still alive and moaning in pain. So instead of saving her, what does he do? He stabs her to death and shoves her in the bed frame. He slept in the same bed with her deceased body for 7 days, and he eventually got life in prison. This is what he looks like now.
On the right, we have Margie Ranshaw, age 29, who went missing from Barryton, Michigan on May 17, 1987. And on the left, we have an unidentified person who was found in Toledo, Ohio on June 16, 1987, almost a month after Margie went missing. I was browsing through the website for missing persons and unidentified bodies like one does, and I came across these two cases. Taking a closer look at the reconstruction compared to the missing person, I would say there's a lot of similarities between the two of them. For instances, their mouths are very similar, and also the nose shape. This is also another photo they have available of Margie, and even in this one, I think she looks very similar to the reconstruction. The last time Margie was seen was leaving in her car to get a gallon of milk. Her car was found a few weeks later in Howell, Michigan. The unidentified body was found in an alleyway behind an auto repair shop, which is close to Interstate 75, remember that. And the body was also wrapped in a pink blanket and had been deceased for several days before being found. This body was also charred/burned when they found it. Going back to the body being found by Interstate 75, this is where the body was found. This is where Margie went missing. This is Interstate 75 right here. To get from here to here, you have to take Interstate 75. As we know, Margie was 29 years old when she went missing. The unidentified body is estimated to be an adult that is pre-30, meaning they are younger than 30 years old. Even though Margie was 29, that is still considered before 30, obviously. Margie's height was also estimated to be somewhere between 5'2" to 5'6", and the estimated height for the unidentified body is 5'4" to 5'7". Going back to the maps, because I forgot to add this. The area where Margie went missing is right here, okay? And this is where her car was found, on the way to Toledo, where the unidentified body was found. Both the women were described to have blonde/strawberry hair color, and I found it interesting because on the unidentified body, it said the hair was a fine texture and only 6 to 7 inches long. Looking at the photo of Margie, it's obvious she has fine hair, but she doesn't have 6 to 7 inches long hair. Her hair is very long. But remember, the unidentified body was burned/charred, meaning it is very much possible that while Margie, if she is this unidentified body, was being burned, the hair could have been burned off as well. That is all I have to share, but could Margie possibly be the Jane Doe?
Let's talk about what happened to Jerry Michael Williams. He grew up in North Tallahassee, Florida, and was a popular high school football player and the class president. He was also dating this cheerleader named Denise Morrell. When Mike wasn't hanging out with his girlfriend Denise, he was hanging out with his best friend Brian Winchester. When the three of them graduated from high school, they all attended Florida State University, which helped Mike continue his relationship with Denise and his friendship with Brian all throughout his adulthood. After they graduated from college, Denise and Mike tied the knot and officially got married on December 20th, 1994. Mike ended up getting a job as a property appraiser and was making over $200,000 a year. There was actually a joke around the office where people would say, "Oh, I wish I was married to Mike because he was just such a great husband and so romantic to Denise." In 1999, the couple gave birth to their first and only daughter, Ansley. At the time, the local news was doing a segment on babies born near Mother's Day, and they actually interviewed Mike and Denise.
This week. We're just totally overwhelmed. She was due Tuesday, and she would have made me wait a whole nother year for Mother's Day, so she came yesterday so I could enjoy this day today with her.
It was unbelievable. I have a whole new respect for my wife and women in general and what they go through to bring a new child, new life into.
After the birth of their daughter, Mike's boss actually told Mike that he should think about amping up his life insurance policy. Mike did love to go duck hunting, and his boss felt that that was dangerous and that now he had a family and needed to think about their future. Mike agreed to this, and he reached out to his friend Brian, who was an insurance salesman, and they worked on getting a new policy set up. In the end, Mike ended up taking out a $1.75 million life insurance policy. So then, on December 16, 2000, Mike had plans to go duck hunting in the morning and told his wife Denise that he would be back by noon. Him and Denise were actually going to celebrate their anniversary, so he was just going to go hunting and then come back and begin the celebration. Some time goes by, and it's now 30 minutes past noon, and Mike still has not returned from his hunting trip. Denise starts to get worried, so she starts blowing up Michael's phone, but he doesn't pick up. Then she decides to call her father, and she calls Brian to see if they have heard from Mike. Neither her father or Brian have heard from Mike, but Brian says that he will go out to the lake and start searching for Mike. So Brian and a couple of other people go out to Lake Seminole and begin looking for Mike. However, there was a huge storm coming their way, so they had to call off the search and move it to the next morning. The next morning, Brian and his father go back to Lake Seminole, and that's when they find Mike's car abandoned. Then, just a couple hundred yards away, they find Mike's boat, which was also abandoned. Brian and the search party begin looking around the area near Mike's boat, and they quickly realize that it's surrounded by very large alligators. This is when people started to theorize that maybe Mike was driving his boat and he accidentally hit a stump. Then either he fell overboard and his waders quickly filled with water and he drowned, or these alligators got to him. Okay, part 2. Moved to these apartments in Provo, Utah. At first, she kind of struggled to make friends since she didn't really know English. However, once she joined the LDS church in Utah, there was a lot of people there that spoke Spanish, so she quickly started to make new friends. She got really close to this guy named Mackie Smith, who said Elizabeth was really pretty, and anytime they would go out, she would always get hit on by every single guy, but that she would always say no because she wanted to focus on her faith and on her studies, and he says that Elizabeth was just a really kind and caring person. So then, on Thursday, April 16, 2015, Elizabeth finished school at around 1:30 p.m. and began the 30-minute walk back to her apartment. Since Elizabeth didn't have a car, she asked her Uncle Rudy if he could pick her up at 5 p.m. to take her to Walmart and get some groceries. As Elizabeth was walking home, one of her sisters texted her and asked her, "What are you doing?" Elizabeth replied and said, "I already left school," which her sister thought was really weird. Elizabeth was never that short with her text messages, so her sister thought it was weird and texted her again, but this time Elizabeth did not reply. The family thought it was a little weird that she hadn't replied, but they just assumed that her phone had died. So then 5 p.m. rolls around and Rudy shows up at Elizabeth's apartment to pick her up. He sends her a text message letting her know he's outside, but she doesn't reply. After a few minutes of waiting, he knocks on the apartment door but doesn't get a response. He just assumes that maybe Elizabeth walked to Walmart instead and didn't let him know, so then he heads over to Walmart to see if he can find her.
So Rudy arrives to Walmart and goes through every single aisle looking for Elizabeth but doesn't see her. Now he's thinking that maybe Elizabeth got called into work and that's why she didn't show up. So then he drives over to the Mexican restaurant where Elizabeth works at and she's not there. He thought this was a little bit weird but figured maybe Elizabeth had made plans with someone else and forgot to tell him, so he decided to just go home. So the next morning, Elizabeth's family wakes up and they expect to find a lot of messages from Elizabeth saying, "Sorry, my phone died, that's why I didn't call you yesterday." However, when they woke up, they had no messages or calls from Elizabeth. Libertad is freaking out at this point and she calls her brother Rudy and tells him to go check on Elizabeth. So he goes over to Elizabeth's school to see if she's there, but she isn't. So then he goes over to Elizabeth's apartment and her roommates answer the door. They tell Rudy that they haven't seen Elizabeth since yesterday morning, which means that after Elizabeth left school and started walking home, she never made it to her apartment. Then they call Elizabeth's job and they tell them that Elizabeth never showed up for her shift. That's when the family decided to call the police department and report Elizabeth as missing. A couple of students say that they did see her on her walk back to her apartment, but then she just vanished. Okay, part 2 is up now.
Police are looking for a woman after an infant boy was found dead at a McDonald's in Phoenix, Arizona. Investigators are calling her a person of interest. Security video shows her walking through the fast food restaurant, trying to open a door, and then walking back through the eating area. Police were called to the restaurant where they found the baby dead inside the bathroom. The baby was pronounced dead at the scene. Police said the autopsy results are still pending. Anyone with information is asked to call Silent Witness at 480-WITNESS.
Let's talk about the 12-year-old boy who was SA'd, tortured, and then brutally murdered by his best friend over $1.75. His name was Gabriel Kun, and he was friends with 17-year-old Daniel Petrie. Before I even continue the video, I just want to say that this is one of the worst cases I've ever come across. And if you guys decide to do some researching on your own, please beware of going to Google Images and looking at the pictures